Hi all, welcome to our Lunch and Learn on accessibility for learning. Throughout our session, there might be some questions that you guys have, so please just pop them in the chat. It will also be good to get an idea of who you are, so please just let us know where you're working from or what you're looking to get out of this training, and hopefully we could do a bit of Q&A at the end, but if not, we will get back to you as well. So just a disclaimer, we are in one of our services at the moment, so if there are any noises, it might be a pupil that's trying to enter the room, but hopefully it's smooth and we can just go through our training as smooth as possible.
Okay, so we wanted to do a little background about who we are. So I am Carrie. I am one of the behaviour analysts at Tramhouse School. I've been working at Beyond Autism for about 8 years. I started as a teaching and learning practitioner, so was working one-to-one with the pupils, and then moved to advanced skills practitioner, where I was kind of training on programs, and then to my current role as a behaviour analyst. So been in this role for about 3 years now, but have also been funded with my master's in ABA and also my board certification. And this is Matt.
And I am Matt. I'm currently the head teacher at Parkhouse School. We teach pupils from 4 to 11, and Carrie works with from year 7s all the way up to 6th form learners. I currently work as a head teacher, but I've worked in a number of roles throughout my time here. I've been working almost 10 years within Beyond Autism. I started as a teaching and learning practitioner, where we worked one-to-one with the pupils, moved on to advanced skill practitioner, where we led in the classroom and training staff, where I took on my teacher qualification and became a teacher for several years after.
Okay, so we're just going to outline the objectives. So within inclusive environment and learning, we'll briefly discuss the assessment period, and then the subsequent 6-week baseline period. We'll then go from there to individualized education plans, and then how we adapt our teaching and learning to meet those targets. In our inclusive teaching and inclusive education, we'll then discuss how we pair the learning environment to make it inclusive, and how we establish reinforcement to support accessibility for learning. Okay, so inclusive environment and learning. So the pupils, if they are trying to access our services, either Tramhouse School or Parkhouse School, will conduct an initial informal assessment. So you'll have 2 assessors that will meet the pupil or the prospective pupil, and they'll assess, for example, academic skills, as well as independent skills, the communication method that the child uses, and also maybe fine and gross motor skills, and also maybe behaviours that we might observe. Some of the considerations that we take into mind are provision of AAC devices, so whether the prospective pupil comes with maybe a PEX board or even like an iPad. And then we'll also look at the OT and SALT input, so whether we can provide therapy at that point, and also whether the teaching should be one-to-one or even 2-to-1. So from there, a 6-week baseline period is then conducted, and this is where we run a bunch of preference assessments. So why do we run preference assessments? We want to determine what items are preferred by the learner. So it might be tangible items like iPads, or it might be activities and actions such as jumping on the trampoline. It could even be rooms such as the sensory or soft play room. We do that to determine what will likely increase behaviour, but more importantly, the desirable behaviours. So these would be considered reinforcers. And if we go on to our next slide, we're just determining the difference between reinforcement and reward. So a tangible item or activity, which is considered a reward, might be chosen for the pupil. So an example might be you or the child might get an attendance certificate for coming in Monday to Friday. You've not necessarily asked for it. A reinforcement, however, would be if you'd come in Monday to Friday, but you'd said that you wanted to work for, I don't know, a £5 gift voucher. So reinforcement is chosen by the pupil, and that way it works and is more likely to increase the probability of desired behaviours and outcomes. So then moving on from our 6-week baseline to our individual education plans, all of the children within our schools do have a diagnosis of autism. They do have an EHCP, and from there we'll create our individualized education plans, and they will be centered on the following areas. So cognition and learning, communication and interaction, social, emotional, and mental health, sensory and physical, and then additional one that we have within our schools is community and leisure. So what we would do, we would work as an interdisciplinary team with the behaviour analysts, the qualified teachers, and the therapists to ensure that the goals that we do set for our learners are appropriate and also conducive, but also achievable. And that way we make the environment and also learning more accessible. Okay, so an example of some of the things that we might consider is within our sensory and physical goals. Some of the needs might include whether we have certain facilities and resources that can support the learner's needs. So the learner might need a sensory diet, or they might need a toolkit. We use zones of regulation within our schools. But it might mean they also need quiet spaces, so access to a sensory room or even movement breaks. That might mean access to a big playground or a soft playroom. The resources and modifications that we consider might be dependent, and it should be dependent and individualized. So we might consider adjustments in lighting. Some of our learners do prefer dimmer lighting, or it might be that they wear sunglasses. Again, the environments can be loud, so it might be that we use that the pupils use ear defenders, or to support their learning and accessibility to the content, they might be seated on wobble cushions, and also to support with focus, they might be given weighted vests. All of these things will be assessed by occupational therapists to make sure that it is appropriate for them. But we're trying to meet the learner's sensory and physical needs to ensure that they're regulated. By ensuring that they're regulated, it means that they can access the environment and learning and teaching can be more accessible for them. Our next example would be in our communication and interaction section. So again, interdisciplinary working happens here with the speech and language therapists, the behaviour analysts, and the OTs. So we'll establish an appropriate communication method. Again, that might be using sign language, it might be using PECs and visuals, or it might be using an iPad with voice output. So what we try to do is make sure that all staff members that work with the pupils have training on that. So in mainstream schools, for example, if a learner is expected to carry around their PECs book or PECs board, when they enter into a kitchen or the cafeteria, the dinner lady should also be aware of how they're communicating that they want, food or drink. Ensuring that we've met the communication needs of our pupils will ensure that we have less communication breakdown and subsequently less behaviours that are perceived to challenge.
Okay, so for this segment of our training, we'll be solely focusing on pairing and how that is effective in inclusive teaching. So pairing is a strategy that is used by behaviour analysts to help build and maintain rapport with the learner. So within our schools, we use this strategy to create a comfortable learning environment to ensure the learner is happy, engaged, and ready to learn. So it's all about building rapport with the learner, making sure they're ready, they're comfortable, and they're willing to follow demands and instructions from the person that's leading the session. So you may hear this term pairing coined within ABA quite a lot. It's often used in our service quite a lot. And that's due to its importance and application to all of our teaching procedures. It's the foundation behind all the teaching that we do here. So we pair before we start teaching, we pair pupils up with new staff, we can pair them up with new resources and new environments that they may go to. So why should we pair? So it's very important to build rapport with our learner. We try to get in on the fun and make unmotivating tasks motivating, and that ensures us being able to open up a wide area where pupils can learn in a variety of things. In doing so, we can help make environments more accessible, we broaden their interests and ensure that their horizons are expanded when we introduce new things. Without pairing, we do risk becoming a worsening set of conditions. So if the expectation is for pupils to follow loads of demands, they may come into our school setting and the first thing they're greeted with is, take your coat off, put this over here, go to classroom, we're going to do handwriting. Now the handwriting's done, pack it away, put this here, do this. It's loads and loads of demands, and over time that become aversive for the students. They might just turn to think, oh, that's that person that comes and tells me to do all these different things, and it's very effortful. I just need a bit of a break. So pairing is very essential in when the learner does see you, they're like, oh, that's that person that is fun. That's that person that gives me all the fun activities. I might do work still, but it's fun. I'm happy to do work, and fun things are about to happen. And that's what we call improving certain conditions. It's quite important to note that pairing needs to be purposeful. We don't want to just be over pairing, where our day consists of just fun activities with the learner. We want these fun activities to be purposeful and meaningful. So if they're engaging to the pupil in a new activity where they're learning something from it, or we're using pairing to settle a learner to go into more difficult tasks, we often coin 20% to 80%. So we start with 20% easy to go to 80% easy to 20% hard in terms of the tasks we're giving our learners. So how to pair the learning environment, and why should we pair? So this is a bit of a scenario. It might be a bit of a personal scenario to me. It might or might not have happened to me in the past, but just imagine this. You've grown up, you've had a bad experience in a dentist, and as a result, it is very stressful and aversive to you. So you have a checkup appointment, but you don't want to go. You might tend to prolong accept an appointment. You might avoid the appointment. You might cancel your appointments because you know that your past experience is causing angst around being in the dentist. So we call this a worsening set of conditions. You've associated the dentist with whatever's happened in the past as a negative place to be in. So you ask your funniest friend to come and support and distract you, as well as bringing your headphones and play your favorite playlist to help you settle in the waiting room whilst having your checkup. So here we can see that your funny friend and your playlist are both things that you associate with an improving set of condition. And as a result, you might feel a bit calmer in the dentist. You might feel more comfortable, and like you could get on with the procedure, whatever is happening in the dentist. Over time, if nothing aversive happens in the dentist and it's just a fun environment to be in, like it's going to become more paired. You're less likely to want to cancel those appointments. You're less likely to, engage in behaviors that you might, maybe avoidance behaviors, to avoid going to the dentist, because it's not so bad, as it's not that much of an worsening set of conditions from that point.
We wanted a little bit of audience feedback here, so maybe just drop in the chat any aversive situations or environments that you feel need to be paired up, just as a little interaction. And then we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so how to pair the learning environment and where we should pair. So within our schools, and I'm sure you've encountered it as well, there's different scenarios where we could use pairing. We've noticed that there are certain situations that our pupils find difficult. So, for example, transitioning, anticipating the unexpected might be one of those scenarios. And the way that we could modify the environment, make it more accessible, would be to use visuals. So if we consider that a learner is starting, or a prospective pupil is beginning at one of our schools, we might send home visuals so that they're aware that, there is a life skills suite in Tram House, or there is a sensory room and a soft play room in Park House. If the learner is already accustomed to the learning environment, it might be using a visual timetable to inform them of what is next. So that could even be scaled back to being a first, next, and then board, but also implementing choice of transitions. So rather than they have to go to the library, maybe they have to go to classroom A. And then also considering transitions might be with preferred people or preferred items. So this is where you might have promise reinforcers or transitional objects. An example could be one of our pupils might not want to go home. So at the end of the day, their home time transition includes going home or going to the car with a preferred teacher. So then we've got learning environments, so new ones.
So introducing new learning environments. So we might watch videos of novel environments. We may use social stories so the learner knows what to expect when in a particular environment, and access to preferable items when in these environments. So essentially, you're bringing all the fun stuff that that can distract that learner in the environment that they might be feeling a little bit anxious about. So it could be iPads, it could be toys, it could be games, it could be activities. Essentially, we're just distracting them to lower their angst, and hopefully they could engage in the environment more effectively over time. A bit of a personal example of this is my nephew. He's autistic. He's 3 years old at the moment, and he visited my house recently for the first time because I recently moved house. And as he entered the house, he was very nervous around it. He stood in the corridor and didn't want to come into the living room. And from there, we realized, you know what, maybe we need to give him some time, pair up the environment a little bit. So we got his tablet out. We played some music of his favorite songs on the projector, turned the lights on, spoke about the colors because he loves colors. And eventually, over time, he just made his way into the front room because we paired it up with all these fun things that he liked. 20 minutes or 30 minutes in, he was himself. He was spinning around, jumping around, singing along with the songs that we played on the projector. And that's like a bit of a perfect example of pairing. Like, we use the things that he really enjoys and loves and paired it with an environment that maybe, although maybe not negatively associated with things with him, but it's the new environment is somewhere difficult for him to go into. So yeah, it has application across loads of different environments.
We've also got introducing new people. So what we would do is training new teaching and learning practitioners alongside familiar ones so that they either shadowed maybe half day or 4 days. We'd make sure we completed handovers so that, the new practitioners were familiar with the likes and dislikes, were able to get in on the interests of the pupil. And again, that just makes it a little bit more fun and conducive.
Cool. And lastly, introducing new resources. So sometimes the resources we might use with our learners might have to use it we want to teach them we want to model to them how to use a resource effectively and correctly. But sometimes, learners might want to use it in a bit of an abstract way. And sometimes we might need to get in on that fun, use it in an abstract way to get them used to the resource. And then we can use it in a more efficient way after. It's just about pairing up those items. We can also use other resources to pair up in the resource. So we can pair, if we are pairing up something new, like if a learner is learning about, it has a program where they're learning how to brush their teeth, for example. If they have their toothbrush there and they don't like the bristles and the toothbrush and toothpaste is all a bit much at the moment in time, we can make it into something fun. We could get a nice strawberry tasting toothpaste. We can get music playing in the background. We could get toys in around the environment, or fun things going on, so it becomes less aversive, and over time we could just engage in brushing teeth without those resources.
We use this a lot for our desensitization programs. So for example, if they have to learn how to tolerate maybe like a practice needle or even like a medical band going around their arm, again, what Matt outlined was just pairing up that environment. Okay, when you should pair. So the need for pairing will depend on the rapport that you have with your learner. Essentially, all we want is for them to feel comfortable and ready to learn. I think that's the main message we've been chiming in on. Most sessions within our schools start with pairing. So you want to establish that the items you have are acting as reinforcers, that they are motivating the learner to engage in desirable behaviors, but also you want to keep an eye on whether the learner is happy to interact and attend to you, and again, whether they feel comfortable and relaxed enough to start learning. After behaviors that challenge a breakdown in communication, it's always to keep in mind that you should always repair with the learner. So myself and Matt, for example, we are team teach trainers, which means we will frequently be called for maybe crisis management. What we then want to do is make sure we repair with our learners so that we're not just associated with being those people that manage a behavior or an incident. We want to be the people that they can run to and that they find valuable and fun to be around.
Okay, so this next segment of the session, we'll be looking at a competency. So I know within the chat, you should be able to download what a competency kind of looks like for pairing. And we're just going to run through like some key areas and the hows and whys we do these things in our pairing sessions. So we prioritize pairing training with staff as soon as they start working with pupils. So there are a number of areas which guides practitioners to be aware to ensure that pairing process is successful. So within our area one of organization, one of our areas that we need to be hot on is making sure our area is neat and clean. So this limits the distractions around for the pupils. It stops them being able to grab other items, and you're more in control of the session, and you'll be able to deliver an effective session that's well planned out in the manner that you want to if you have it organized, neat, and all well prepared.
The next one is ensuring that materials you want are readily available. Your key pupils should have a number of items that you've identified as reinforcers, and you should keep them on you. A lot of our learning and teaching practitioners will be carrying what's known as a reinforcer bag. And again, that allows them to pair up new resources if they have that readily available.
Okay, next up is having a variety of potential reinforcement available. So we don't try not to limit our reinforcement to just one type. For example, if you're pairing up an activity around Play-Doh because you know your learner likes Play-Doh, rather than just sticking to one box of Play-Doh and one color, you can mix it up, have different colors. Try pairing up music with it, bring in rollers, bring in shape cutters, shape molds, cutters, googly eyes if you want to make a character, or squeezing syringes if you want to squeeze the Play-Doh into stringy bits. Like loads of different ways to make Play-Doh even more fun. So when you're around, more things become fun for the learner.
Our next area is around the pupil's bag being neat and all the things being available and necessary. So again, back to the reinforcer bag, we always want to have a plan B, but you don't want to be rummaging through your reinforcer bag. You want things readily available. The quicker you can get to it, the better you're able to deliver the reinforcement.
Okay, now this is looking at area 2, which is our pairing procedure. So these are skills that we're looking for our TLPs to demonstrate within their sessions, or within their pairing sessions rather. So confirming motivation of the items is very important. So being aware of your learner's motivation for items. Key indicators are usually gazing at items, reaching for the items, smiling. They might even request for the items. We essentially want to just give these items out as soon as we see motivation from the learner, so we become associated with a giver rather than a taker.
And then following on from that point, you want to deliver freebies. So you don't want to be taking, again, you want to either be exchanging. So if you can see that motivation is moving away from, let's say, the Play-Doh, you then might start to exchange maybe a ball in place. Again, you're delivering things for free without expecting the learner to request for them.
Okay, the next thing is we deliver the item name when we're delivering reinforcement. So whenever you're delivering an item or an action, say the name, say what you're doing. If you're lifting the pupil up, you're saying, oh, lift or up. Or if you're blowing bubbles, say bubbles. This is because we're preparing our learners into, like using the same language that we're using to begin to communicate. So pairing is one way of like doing this. It's also very effective in pairing your voice up. So when a learner hears your voice, they're more likely to respond to your instruction because fun things are associated with your voice as well.
Okay, and the next one is, again, not interrupting reinforcing activities. You don't want to be taking from the learner. If you can see that they're having fun, maybe you sit alongside them and maybe just label and narrate, or maybe you have the same item alongside you so that you can interact with it and model how to play with these items. Yeah.
Cool. And this is just going on from what Carrie said. Just do not remove a reinforcement. We always want to trade it out. If you want your learner to engage in something new or an interesting way, rather than giving the demands of telling them to look or take this or hold this, trying to engage interaction with it. For example, a learner that likes toys that might spin, they might be playing with the spinny toy already, but they might start to get satiated or get a bit bored of it. So you might want to contrive motivation for something else. You might have a ball and they're not showing interest into the ball. But what happens if you've got the skill set to spin the ball in your finger and be like, oh wow, it's spinning. Do you want to try? Give me your finger. Look, spin it on your finger. That's a way of contriving motivation for something more fun for the learner to engage in.
And then our final one around the pairing procedure is appear to have fun with the pupil. So we want to make sure that we're smiling, we're interacting, we're approaching, we're laughing. We want to show our telltale signs of motivation. So try to make this as genuine as possible. If you don't think an activity is fun for you, maybe you will find a way to make it more fun as well. And it might not necessarily be fun, but as long as you appear to be having fun. Again, you want the learner to find interactions with you and activities with you engaging.
Cool. And this is pretty much just an overview of what we spoke about. So pairing, who should pair and who do we pair? And I've noticed in the chat, someone's mentioned, could we pair with a learning support assistant? Everyone should be pairing if we're working with or engaging with a learner. All staff should engage in pairing procedures with pupils they work with. We should be able to, we we should be adults that the pupils want to run towards, who they're excited to learn for because they find value in us and associate us with being fun. But again, it's about finding that balance. You don't want to be over-pairing all the time where we're reducing the amount of educational opportunities our learners have. We want to pair purposefully so that they're comfortable to learn and they're ready and willing to learn.
Yeah. And going back to that question in the chat, if you consider the LSA is the person that the child is probably with maybe 6 to 8 hours in the day, is especially important, because then once you've paired with the pupil, that's when you can start taking direction from the adult. So final points around what can we pair. We can pair classroom environments by having teachers or LSAs, for example, that make the lessons fun and engaging, offering reinforcement when desired behaviors such as listening and attending are exhibited. Reinforcement was touched upon in our last Lunch and Learn with Kat and Sarah, so if you do want to look at that, you can. We compare new activities and resources such that the pupil can gain new pupils and skills. Again, if we weren't pairing these items up, then you might have a limited amount of interest that the child is unaware that they could have even more. And we compare people such that the pupils learn to work with and take direction from numerous adults.
Cool. And where can we pair? So we can pair in a school, we can pair into different classrooms within the school, different rooms that aren't that familiar with the learner, or if an immersive event has happened in the room and the pupil doesn't want to go to that room again, that might suggest we might need to pair that room up again. We can pair in a community, for example, when entering a shop, learning how to use transport, buses or trains. Essentially, we could pair everywhere. Wherever there's a need for pairing, wherever there's aversion to something in an environment, pairing is always a good place to go to make that less aversive and open up the empowering the learning within that environment.
Yeah. And then the final one is when can we pair? So particularly at the start of anything new, any novel experience, so welcoming a new child to the school, for example, you want to pair throughout the day. If social reinforcement and social praise is something that they're reinforced by, then you can pair those situations up as well. But we want to also just pair small wins in the day so that they start to understand, okay, this is where my learning is happening, this is where I'm getting praised. Okay, I think we're on the last point and we'll start to take some questions.
Cool. We do see some questions here. Here is a question. Do you have any ideas to help transition from a favorite activity, for example, iPad, to another activity, creative play, for perhaps where there is a bit of a resistance?
I can come first. So maybe again using those visuals. So you maybe having a first and then next board. So first iPad and then creative play, or it could even be as simple as maybe having a timer. So maybe they play with an iPad for maybe 2 minutes, and then you want to start small with the creative play. They only have to play for maybe 30 seconds with the creative play, and then they can go back to the iPad. So you don't want to make sure that they're having the creative play at 30-minute segments if that's a particularly difficult activity to move from. Or it could be that you just have the iPad alongside the creative play, which is what we've been discussing, all the stimulus pairing, a favored song, or the iPad is playing whilst they're maybe interacting with the paintbrush.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
Be creative around it. Like if they're looking at something on the iPad, maybe something just came to my mind. I'm probably thinking of my niece, but Peppa Pig. If she's looking at that, could you engage with having Peppa Pig related resources within the creative play or activities as well, because you're pairing that up with things that they already like. If it's just the music element that they're enjoying from the iPad, maybe give them headphones and engage in the creative play. Or if it's videos they're watching, the video could play alongside the creative play, and eventually you're going to fade it out because they get more comfortable or get more paired with the creative play activities. We usually break up our sessions into 15-minute segments, so pupils tend not to get too satiated on that activity, so keep it short and sweet. There's another suggestion as well.
And then another question is, in a mainstream school, would this assessment be the responsibility of the SENCO? Not necessarily. The pairing assessment, if that's what you're referring to, the pairing assessment, that is conducted by our advanced skills practitioners or our behaviour analysts like myself. So the people that are in the classroom environment. And one more up here. If a child is in a mainstream independent school, I wondered where is best to look for trained OT, SLT professionals who can deliver therapies outlined in an EHCP. I think often independent schools don't have contracts with the LA.
Yeah, I think that's one we'll get back to you. So we'll some of the, just where we're running out of time. So with that one, and any of the other questions, as it is now 1 o'clock, we will email you guys and contact you with other information that might be supportive of your questions. If that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. We'll get back to you with those questions in an email, and then the next Lunch and Learn that we have is being delivered by Jessica Hargreaves and Sarah Motto, who are our speech and language and occupational therapists. It's on challenging the sensory issue.
Great. Okay. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.